questions in here. I say this is the only, I'm big on preparing, y'all know that. This is the only sermon I don't prepare for. So makes me a little bit nervous. Here I go. What should we do if we're not sure what we should do with our lives? You just pray. That's one answer. You know, I think that's probably something that most of us, no matter our age, think about. Because even if you're 72 years old, you think, well, probably got some life left. What should I do with the rest of my life? I think if you have a passion, you try to work toward that. Why not? If you can. And if you don't, you just take it day by day and do the best you can every day. Yes. Just love every day and you'll be all right. Mama done said it'll be all right. Yeah, it is a concern. Especially, it's different at different ages. You have midlife, that's a concern there, but it's you're always transitioning. And what are you going to do with the rest of your life? It's not just about jobs, it's about other kinds of things as well. I think it is helpful to talk with other people about it. Sometimes you might even need to talk to a professional about it, a therapist or something, or at least friends, and get input about it. I have colleagues that are on these lists with me, and we can, thankfully, with the internet now, you can talk to all kinds of people, and it's good to get some input. Kind of helps you think through things. But when it comes right down to it, it's up to you. It's up to you. Sometimes there are limitations, you know, what we can do with our lives, we may not be able to do with our lives because of limitations on them. So we have to take that into consideration as well. There are resources as limitations. There are physical bodies as limitations. So kind of what can I do with the rest of my life with these limitations? I already decided to scratch several things off my list. I used to think I would want to one day jump out of an airplane. Scratch. So there's some things that I'm not going to do the rest of my life that I thought at one time I would do. But there are other things, there are many things I can't do. Good question. This says, it's a long question. When you look back on younger versions of yourself, childhood Jane, teenage Jane, young adult Jane, and the decisions you made, how do you feel about her now that you are Jane of a certain age? Oh, I like the way they ended that. Jane of a certain age, 76, of a certain age. You know, I forgive her and I care about her, you know, and some parts of her I'm proud of, some parts of her I'm disappointed with. But everything she did, all those Janes did, made this Jane. So it's all a part of me. And so I'm thankful for that, because even when that Jane made bad decisions, it became something that I learned from. So, so I feel pretty good about her, even the bad tough times, because those tough times, I think times that maybe she didn't make the best decisions, were still part of what I took in to become who I am today. Good question. All right. What's your favorite season? I much prefer spring or fall than winter or summer. But I like them all. I'm glad we have seasons. Wouldn't it be boring if we didn't have any, you know, if the weather was the same every day? So I'm glad we have them, but I'm loving it now. I am just loving now. And sometimes you just want to hold on to it, you know. I really like it right now. I love the different colors of green I see, the different blossoms, I love the little breezes we get now. So I'm just loving now. So I would probably say spring, but fall is good too. Winter, but fortunately I live here, so we only have 2 weeks of real winter. Tips for maintaining relationship with family when you also need big boundaries. Ooh, that's. This is for me. This is for me. I have relatives that are very different than me in what I think about and what I care about, but I love them, you know, and so, and I want to maintain a relationship with them. So I've compromised on, this is me, I've compromised on the kinds of conversations I have with some folks. I can talk with you all about almost anything, but I can't talk with my family about almost anything. And you all may be in the same situation. I mean, you have to, you want a good relationship, you try to share about things that are loving and caring and that will make both of you better people. The other thing with me is I want to help my family members, but my help with family members has sometimes been enabling of things that aren't good. And so, of course, you don't realize it when you're doing it sometimes. When you're helping, you just want to help. But I've learned as I've experienced it. So yeah, now I have some boundaries and I've set them a little better. And I know what I know what my brother and I'll just take my brother's example. Actually, he and I share more genes than anybody else, right? We have the same, my mom and daddy said we should be more alike than anybody. But we're very, very different. And so there are things that we can talk about food all day long. He loves to talk about food. So I am all for talking about food. I can, you know, and when it gets much beyond that, it gets kind of tough. We can talk about taking care of mama. But there are most of the things that you and I would have conversations about, I just sort of steer away from them. Because if I thought that maybe, I know it's good to have difficult conversations, and I do with other folks, but I don't with him because it wouldn't do any good. And so we just don't have it. Sometimes I have them. I do sometimes, but then I have to try to heal those hurts that come about. So I haven't figured this out totally, but I would say I don't mind that I have given up to some degree on some kinds of conversations and some kinds of things I can do with some family members. Sometimes that's just better. Others you can still continue to have, but there's some family members it's just better not to. It's just better to if you want to maintain a relationship. Now, sometimes it may not be worth maintaining a relationship. I understand that. Sometimes it's better to let go of some relationships. It's such a difficult thing. And I have let go of some relationships. Because it was like, you're either going to die in it, I don't know, either really die or emotionally die or get out of the relationship. So I understand that as well. But if you want to maintain it, you have to work that out so that it can be healthy for both of you. Y'all are doing some deep, difficult stuff here. What can we do to keep climate change on the front page for folks every day? Yes, we could write to Al Hackle and tell him to put the article in the paper. And keep it up there though. You're right, because it's it's affecting everything we do continually. And I guess and now that it's now banned from discussion of so many things, you know, I've read some legislators and some school boards that they do not want it discussed at all. All the more reason for us to bring it up and talk about it. I think we can write letters to the editor. We can lift it up on social media and just keep it up front, because And make it a little more, make it specific. Here's a result of this, here's what's happened. You know, just say, well, people don't care about numbers, but here's a family and here's what happened here. And this was the direct result of what's happened to climate change. Here's what happened to their property. Here's what's happened to their loved one, a direct result. People relate more to stories about things like that. So I think the more we can write about people and the effects of climate change, I hate to say it, because we should care about the whole earth and the effects of climate change, but with keeping it in front of some people's heads, it needs to be more stories about what happens to communities, people. And I think that will get through to some people more than others. Now, others, like us, are very concerned about when we see all these forests just being, I mean, in Southeast Georgia now, you just ride down the road and whole big forests have been slashed. You know, I mean, everywhere I go now, I see more and more of that. It's just like, okay, you expect some of it. I get really conflicted about it. I like the idea that we've got industry coming in here that supplies jobs, etc. That's a good thing. We need people to have work, but we are just destroying the habitats of so many creatures. So it's something we need to lift up. But I think when we talk about it in terms of people, more people will be inclined to support our efforts to reduce our footprint. The other thing we could do is talk about how we are doing that. We were talking in our little fellowship circle last night about, well, wouldn't it be nice if we had a pavilion that we could get under if we have another pandemic and don't have that? So well, that costs a lot of money. Then I got thinking, you know, I recently read that you could get help with those kinds of things from grants if you cover the top up with solar panels. Mm-hmm. So who knows, you know? What is your current passion project? Oh, talk about following your passions. I do want to start writing more, and I write all the time. Of course, I write sermons, I write emails to all of you, I write newsletter articles. I mean, I write every day, but I do want to write more creatively and more. So I took this class from Janice Ray on creative nonfiction, and enjoyed doing some of that. So I am going to take my computer with me on my mini sabbatical, and I'm going to try to write some. And I'm going to try to get down some stories. My mom won't let me record her old stories, but I remember some of them. So I'm trying to write some of those and get some of those in that. And I'm trying to maybe write some things that it'll be meaningful to me and helping me kind of think about stuff, but might be meaningful to others as well. I'm not especially interested in publishing a book or publishing stories, because now you can just, when I would if I needed it for my, if I was an academic who needed it for my resume or whatever. But now you can just put stuff out into the world. You know, you don't have to do all that. You just put it out there and let it go. So my passion now probably is going to be to do more writing. And also I'd like to while I'm able, travel and see some stuff, and do some stuff, and so Greg and I are going to do that. But I still have great passion for Unitarian Universalism. So I'm trying to think about how, when I'm no longer the minister of a church, what am I going to do to contribute to this movement? How can I contribute to this movement? So I'm still very, very passionate about Unitarian Universalism. What is the best advice you've ever been given? I think I'm gonna come back to that. I've been given a lot of good advice, but I think that is the best advice. Say the best advice I have been given. I guess the best advice, I'll tell you some bit of advice. You may think that your work, what you do in church or your job or whatever, is just indispensable. But if something happened to you, it's not. It will go on. You are not indispensable. That's advice. You don't have to you don't have to be the one to respond to everything and do everything. It won't, it'll get done a lot, but you are not indispensable. And so don't live your life as if you are, and as if you have to answer everything that comes up on the question and be everywhere and do everything. I've had to really work on that, especially as a pastor, because two congregations, and now people about to leave because I'm like, oh my, this one's in the hospital and he may die, and this one doesn't know what happened about it. I'm leaving, all stuff. It'll be all right. Mom done said it'll be all right. It will be all right. There are others that can step in. So that's one bit of advice. Okay. How do you deal with the tension between respecting differences but highlighting commonalities? Well, I heard this morning, Greg says that he was reading that was it our legislature or some of the others were wiping out. You can't even use the word diversity, inclusion. You can't even shorten it. Yeah, you can't. Oh, we can't use those words anymore. You can't use diversity or inclusion or equity or anything like that. So we made, since we're not in school systems, that really bothers me. Because I do think one of the big things we need to do is respect differences and welcome differences. Welcome people are different and love that. That's one thing one reason I want to be a Unitarian Universalist. When I go into a setting where everybody's just alike in some way, I'm not just talking about gender and race, but other things too. It's like 50 people. I get really uncomfortable. I want to have different people, around me. Because I like differences. But yes, while respecting the differences, if we're going to get anything done, even as a congregation, we have to focus on our common elements. That's why we do lift up common values, love, and for us, equity and diversity, of those kinds of things. We lift up our commonalities of what kinds of things that we do have in common, how we want to move on, how we want to work on some things. Are we going to ever be able to? I had a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses come by yesterday. And again, I know that they base everything on assuming that you accept the Bible as authority. And because that's how they base their acceptance. So I had plenty to do yesterday because we were having some people over. I said, well, you need to know I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister, and we don't accept the Bible as authority. It's inspirational. But they said, oh, they said, we want to talk to you about this and this. And so really, I've studied your religion, and I know we have some commonalities, like we both have historically are Unitarian rather than Trinitarian. And then they said, and then I also let them know, and I said, I know we also care deeply about the earth, and you do too. But my understanding is, from talking to others of you, that we can't work together on that. And they said, that's right. I said, we're not, your religion will not allow you to work with us in that. And so we just have to work separately and respect one another, and respect the differences, but not work together because, but with others, we can work with. There are other groups that think differently than we do, but still we have some things in common. So when we work with the folks at Magnolia Missionary Baptist Church, we're partners with them with Rebecca's Cafe. We have different theologies, but we all care about feeding people. That's important to all of us, to feed people. And so that's what we lift up, the need for feeding people. And we can work with others on other issues that we have in common. And that's what we do. And then the things that we don't have in common, we just say, well, we have to disagree about that and we have to work with other people on these things. And if we can all do that, instead of polarizing ourselves so much, then maybe we have some hope in the world. All right, I got maybe two more. Let's see what they are. Any advice about raising teenagers and transitioning them into adulthood? I am no authority. No authority. I remember when JD was born, my then husband was standing by when we looking at Linda. I said, oh, isn't he cute? And he said, yeah, but one day you'll turn 15. I really, uh, I did my best. Fred Third said one time, my brother said, he and they were talking about, my brother said he had saw a t-shirt he was gonna get that said, my son was the only, from mama, it said, my son was the only hell my mama ever raised. And then Fred the Third said, well, I was gonna get one for my mom that says, mama tried. And that is the truth. I tried, but I had a hard time and still do. You know, I told Thomas before he goes for that judge for speeding, he better cut his hair. But I don't know what he's gonna do. I mean, that I always said I'm not gonna care what my grandchildren do with their hair, they do whatever they want to. But I know full well if he goes with his hair like it is for that judge, probably it's gonna be those judges are pretty, you gotta look. But we'll see, and he'll learn his own lesson if he, you know. We'll see what happens. I try. That's all I can say. Do your best. I don't have to ask somebody else besides me. Ask somebody who's been more successful than I have. I try, but I still try. Why did women mothers discover Jesus had risen first? Well, there are all kinds of good stories that Christians put with this, saying that women are the ones that were the first missionaries, were baptized and whatever. All this. Of course, we don't know if it's true or not. But it's neat. It's nice to think about that. That you know. The reason they really discovered it first, if you want to know the real reason they were there first, is they were doing the dirty work. The women had to do the disgusting, dirty work back then, and sometimes even today. Not as much, but even today, more women change diapers than men do. You know, there's a correlation, by the way, related to the relationship a father has with their children about how many diapers they change. Okay. Well, they were going to do the putting on of by the time they're already stinking, you know, who's been in there for a while, going and put the herbs on it. It's their job to do that because they were the women. That's who had to do that. And that's why they discovered the body was missing, because they were the first ones there, because they came to do the dirty work. The smelly work, the unpleasant work. But now that's been turned into, well, they were honored by it and all this kind of stuff. But we can say that, and they lived it up. You can answer it any way you want to, but I still know why they were there doing it. It's because they were women. That's who did that kind of thing. Wow, that's it. That's it. That's all the questions.